So it was probably March, sometime in the early spring when I passed the exam. I was a licensed adjuster, and I had all these dreams that I was going to make all this money that I heard you were going to make you $100,000 in a month or two, or even 3 months. And it ended up by April, May, I started realizing that it wasn't that simple. It wasn't as simple as just getting your license and then people would just be throwing themselves and their money at you. It wasn't like that. I had this expectation in my head that this was going to be easy and it was going to be easy money. Nobody wants to believe in a get rich quick scheme, but I convinced myself that that's what this was. And when I discovered the hard way that it wasn't, it discouraged me so much that I was done with it. So that was in the spring. So by the time summer rolled around, I had already started mentally detaching myself from it. I'm moving on. It was just another thing that, I was lied to about, and there was, no gold at the end of that tunnel. And I don't think even I believed myself when I would tell myself that. I was just sort of pushing myself forward into this life of mediocrity at that moment. So then at that point, I wasn't in a relationship with anyone, but I had been seeing this girl. And just like many before that, there wasn't a serious relationship. I had no intentions of having a serious relationship with her. It was just a little fling, and I was going to move on until found out it was July 17th. So I got licensed in March, and July 17th, she comes around and find out she's pregnant. So at that point, I had already quit my job as a bartender. I quit my job as a bartender. I thought I was going to be this, traveling catastrophe adjuster, and that didn't work out. And I was ashamed. So I didn't go back to work. So because I didn't go back to work, now I'm building up debt. I think I had something like $30,000 worth of credit debt at that point. So, what do you got? You got a high school dropout, $30,000 in credit debt. My car was falling apart, and now I'm going to be a baby daddy to somebody I really barely even know. So, if there's any, for me, that was rock bottom. I've had a history with drugs and things like that, but that to me was rock bottom. That was all of my poor planning finally coming to a head. And now I was going to be the father of someone, and I was going to be taking care of someone. And I was obviously failing at taking care of myself. So that did something to me. And I know that other people have kids, and unfortunately, sometimes it doesn't do anything to them. But for me, it did. For me, all I could think about was all the mistakes that I had made leading up to that point, and how someone was going to be growing up and watching me perform all of these continued mistakes and really see what it looks like firsthand to not care about yourself enough to build your own future into something. And that's all I focused on. And so I knew at that point, I really didn't have that many options. I was a bartender. That's what the one thing that I was better at than anything else was bartending and working in restaurants. The job I had before, there was a possibility of me moving into at the hotel that I worked at. There was a possibility of me finding my way into a food and beverage director spot, which I think the salary with that was like $60,000 a year. And that didn't do anything for me. But that was my upside. It didn't do $60,000 meant nothing to me. Money has changed since then, but $60,000 really wasn't that great back then. Certainly not that great now. And that was what I had to look forward to. It was either that, or I figure out this independent adjusting thing that I kind of gave up on. And I knew that these like Google listings, the guys that I met at the bar, all these people were not in cahoots with each other. This wasn't a big conspiracy. opportunity was there, and I knew the opportunity was there. But I think in the back of my mind, I knew that I really didn't give it the best shot I could possibly give it getting in. And I knew that at that moment, I had the two options. I could go back to working behind a bar, maybe trying to clear 40 a year, 50 if you know, 50 at best, doing side jobs. Maybe on a good year I make 60. It was either that or figure out this independent adjusting thing. So I went laser focused on it. That was all I freaking thought about for 8 months, 9 months, whatever it was. That is all I thought about. And I went after it like a freaking crackhead at 4 a.m. I became obsessed. It was the only thing I thought of: how to build myself up, how to find these companies to work with. Who are the companies that I need to work with? What do I need to know to get this job? What do I need to know to sell these companies? I need to get the money that these people were talking about. Not only did I need to get it, my kids needed to get it. So that's exactly what I did. So I went crazy about this independent adjusting thing. And in a short amount of time, I was able to land my first gig. In a couple months, I landed my first gig. It didn't last that long, but it was a gig nonetheless. And then I just kept pushing and pushing and pushing. And then I got an opportunity to go out and handle storm claims. So I started handling that. But as I was handling that, I knew in the back of my mind, because at that point I had seen all the negative stories of people saying that they got a break into claims, but then after that dried up, they didn't see a single claim for a while. I wasn't trying to make this a part-time thing. I was trying to make this a full-time thing. So even though I had one client that I was servicing and it was a storm claim, and storm claims go away after a while, I kind of went about it with this paranoia that at any moment the rug can be pulled out from under me. And this whole thing, I could find myself right back behind a bar, maybe with a couple extra dollars, maybe I'll pay off my credit cards, but I'm right back at the bar. And I didn't want that. So I continued to improve myself. I continued to add to my credentials, continue to add to my resume, finding more clients. And I continued to do that. And honestly, I continued to do that for a few years before I finally started to realize, wait a minute, I'm doing okay. I don't think that the rug's going to be pulled out from under me. But here's what ended up happening. I ended up building something so I had the one child. I had my daughter Aubrey. I named my business after her. So I had my daughter Aubrey. I stayed with the mother, and then we had another kid together. And then I had to double down. I doubled down on everything I was doing. And we ended up having 3 kids all together. And every time that happened, so I didn't go after this thing thinking, oh, this is going to be better than a job. I didn't go after this independent adjusting thing thinking, oh, yeah, I'm going to make good money and I'll be able to buy a car. I went after this thing because I knew in my family there wasn't very many people that could be relied on financially. There really wasn't. There was one person in my family that could be relied on financially, and that was it. And everybody else was attaching themselves to that person. I needed to be that person. I didn't want to ever have to ask anybody for money. I didn't ever want to have to tell my kids that they can't get something. I didn't ever want to have to, guide them at a restaurant to order something that they don't want because it's something that's cheaper. I didn't ever want to do any of that stuff. So I went after this thing thinking, I need to be a person in my children's life who they can look up to and say, hey, my father did not have an entitled life, but he made something of it anyway. And he did all these great things for me. I'm not going after this thing to build a great business. I went after this thing because I want to build a legacy. And that sounds weird as a claims adjuster. Who wants to be claims adjuster building a legacy? That doesn't make any sense. No, it really doesn't when you explain it, when you say it like that. But this independent adjusting thing, there's so much of an income potential here that you can use that money that you're making off these independent claims that you're handling. There's so much money that you can make doing it that you can take that money and change other people's lives with it, whether it's giving it to a loved one that's hurt, whether it's giving it to your church, giving it to an organization, or investing that into something that's going to grow, investing in a property, investing it in another business. There's so many different things that you can do with that money that, quite frankly, you can't do it when you're broke. You can't do it when you're making 60, I don't care, $80,000, $90,000 a year, especially if you have kids. It's just not going to happen. I knew that this was the route for me to take to build that legacy, to actually start creating an income that's going to change some lives. So when I had the opportunity to do it, when I knew it was sink or swim, I freaking did it.